They laughed when I bought the family cabin at auction, until they found out what's hidden inside. Nobody wanted the cabin, not after Grandpa Walter died. To them it was just a crumbling shack tucked deep in the North Georgia woods, too far from cell towers, too full of dust, too wrapped in memories they'd rather forget. But to me it was the only place that ever felt like home. I was standing at the back of the county auction hall when the bidding started, my name barely registered with the auctioneer. Opening bid, $5,000. Do I hear 5? Silence. 5,200. That was it. Just like that, I owned the Carter family cabin. At the next family gathering, the one Carla insisted we hold at her renovated condo, all sterile surfaces and scented candles, they laughed. Nathaniel, ever the star of the show in his polished loafers and smug grin, raised his glass of overpriced wine. To Jake, the proud new owner of a raccoon nest in the middle of nowhere, Carla chimed in, pretending to be sweet. You just wanted to be closer to Grandpa, huh? Even Mom didn't bother to hide her smirk. You'll regret it, Jake. That place will eat your savings alive. I said nothing. I never do. But that night, driving up the winding roads toward the cabin, with fog hanging low over the trees and stars blinking through the canopy, I felt something settle inside me. Something quiet. Something right. The cabin greeted me like an old grouchy friend. Wood rot on the porch steps, a sagging roofline, moss growing thick on the stone chimney. But it was still standing, still waiting. I spent the first week pulling out dead furniture, scrubbing mildew, patching the roof with salvaged shingles from a yard sale. I worked in silence, the kind of silence only the forest could offer, broken only by birdsong, creaking branches, and the steady rhythm of my own breathing. It was on the 6th day, after fixing a cabinet hinge in the kitchen, that I decided to check the storage closet in the hallway. The door stuck, swollen from years of damp air. I had to shoulder it open. Inside, a pile of moth-eaten blankets, an old fishing rod, and a wall that didn't look quite right. It was the paneling. Every board was vertical except one. This one ran horizontal, almost like a cover. I knocked, hollow. Heart picking up speed, I reached for my pry bar. It took 15 minutes to wedge it free. Behind it, a square metal face, a built-in safe, the kind with a brass dial and rust on the hinges. No handle, no keypad, no way in, not without the code. I stared at it for a while, something heavy pressing down in my chest. Grandpa had been a private man, paranoid even. He kept journals written in shorthand and never let anyone near his filing cabinet. What could he have locked away here? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, after oatmeal and instant coffee, I started clearing the entryway, just to keep busy. That's when I lifted the old runner rug by the front door and saw it. A yellowing scrap of paper, duct taped to the floorboard. Written in faded ink, 4 numbers. 19 to 46, 3 to 8. It had to be. The numbers haunted me all night. I didn't even brush my teeth the next morning, just shuffled over to the hallway closet in my socks, paper in one hand, flashlight in the other. 19 to 46, 3 to 8. I turned the dial slowly like I'd seen in old spy movies. My fingers trembled, from excitement or fear I wasn't sure. With each click the weight in my chest grew heavier. Then, clunk, the lock gave. The metal door creaked open, dust puffing out like the breath of something ancient. Inside was a cloth bundle and a metal box. I pulled everything out and carried it to the kitchen table, heart thudding like I'd just dug up someone's grave. First the cloth bundle, heavy, wrapped in oil-stained flannel. I peeled it open. Cash, stacks of it, hundreds, maybe 20 grand in total. Neatly wrapped, labeled by year, all from the late 90s to early 2000s. Old bills but still good. 2 legal-sized envelopes. One labeled, Will to 2009, the other, Will, 2017. I opened the older one first. It was typed, notarized, signed clearly by Grandpa Walter. His handwriting, unmistakable, strong and steady. It left the cabin to me, by name, Jake Carter. The rest of his assets, his savings, his truck, his military pension, were to be divided equally among all the grandchildren. It was fair. It was just like Grandpa. Then I opened the second will, same typeface, same format, but this time the cabin was marked to go to the family, no names, and the rest, split between Carla, Nathaniel, and Martha, my mother. The signature at the bottom was shaky, barely legible, and dated just 3 weeks before he died. That was impossible. Grandpa had a stroke 2 months before he passed. After that, he couldn't write his name, let alone manage his estate. My skin went cold. I turned back to the box. Inside were 2 cassette tapes and a stack of papers yellowed but dry. One cassette was labeled, October 12th, Carla visit the other, October 17th, Martha plus Carla. I didn't have a cassette player, but I knew what I'd be doing next time I went into town. Then I saw the envelope at the bottom. Thick manila, labeled simply, Langley. Inside were emails printed from what looked like Grandpa's old email account. Copies of faxes, financial documents. There were bank transfers, large ones. From Walter Carter's account to Carla Montgomery's account. Labeled as care services. But Grandpa was under VA care at the time. There were receipts from a pharmacy 2 counties over, but no records in Grandpa's name. And then, a photo, a black and white printout. Poor quality, like it came from an old security cam. In it, my mother and Carla sitting in Grandpa's den. Carla had a document in her lap. My mother was pointing to a page, mid-sentence, her mouth twisted in what looked like a smirk. On the back, March 3rd. Right after the second stroke. He couldn't speak. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling, the wood above stained with years of smoke and sap. They didn't just leave me out, they erased me. Tucked inside the will from 2009 was one last thing, a handwritten note on Grandpa's old lined paper. The scrawl was shaky, but it was his. I'd seen it 100 times in birthday cards and grocery lists. Jake, if you're reading this, it means they got greedy. Don't let them bury the truth, Walter. I sat there for a long time. Not angry, not yet, just quiet. The way the forest goes quiet right before a storm rolls in. By the next morning, the cash was back in the safe. Not because I didn't need it, I did. My checking account could barely cover a full tank of gas and a run to the diner in town, but I wasn't about to go spending blood money. Not until I understood just how deep the rot went. Instead, I spent the early hours taking photos of every document, scanning them with an old app on my phone. I made 2 copies of everything, one in the cloud, one on a flash drive I duct taped to the bottom of a floorboard in the pantry. Paranoia? Maybe. But when your own mother is caught on camera conspiring to rob you blind, trust becomes an antique, nice in theory, but useless in practice. I made a pot of burnt coffee and stared out the kitchen window as the sun filtered through the pine needles, and out of nowhere a memory returned. Me, maybe 9 years old, coloring spaceships with cheap crayons on the floor. My brother Nathaniel had just won some academic award, and Mom was setting up a shelf for his medals. She walked past me, glanced down at my paper and said, "Another drawing? Jake, you should try real work. Nobody's going to care about your little scribbles." But Grandpa did. He found it one day and folded it gently into the pocket of his flannel shirt. A week later, he handed me a piece of carved wood, a little boat, maybe 4 inches long, with a flag on top, and my initials scratched in the base. "You see things that are worth saving," he said, rubbing his weathered thumb across the hull. "That's a gift, Jake. Don't let anyone make you forget that." I blinked the memory away, throat tightening. By noon, I was on the road to Jasper, the nearest town with actual cell service and a pawn shop. $30 and a little awkward haggling later, I walked out with a used cassette player and a handful of batteries. But first, I had another stop to make. I pulled off a dirt road lined with rusted mailboxes, and pulled up to a battered trailer shaded by a crooked oak. The name stenciled on the tiny mailbox, Langley. The door opened before I could knock. "Mr. Carter," came a gravelly voice, warm but cautious. "I wondered when one of you would come." Mr. Langley was 82, short, sharp-eyed, and smelled like pipe smoke and mothballs. He poured us tea in mismatched mugs and led me to a recliner patched with duct tape. "I was Grandpa's lawyer," he said before I even asked. "For over 20 years. The first will, the real one, we finalized together in 2009. I notarized it myself." I pulled it from my folder and showed him. He smiled faintly. "That's mine, all right. My stamp's right there." Then I pulled out the second one. His smile vanished. "Where'd you get this?" he asked, taking the paper, turning it over in his fingers. I told him everything. Well, most of it. He snorted. "This one's a fake. Walter couldn't write by the time this was dated. And look at this signature. That's not his hand. That's someone trying to copy his hand." "And the notary?" I asked. Langley squinted at the name. "Terry Hanford. He's no notary. He's a golf buddy of Nathaniel's. Did some shady estate work before the bar suspended him." My stomach turned. Mr. Langley leaned forward. Your grandpa trusted you, Jake. He talked about you more than anyone. That cabin was meant for you, not because of favoritism, but because you cared about things most folks throw away. I left the trailer with confirmation and an old man's blessing. But in the pit of my stomach, something was brewing. This wasn't just fraud, it was a hit job. A slow, careful rewriting of legacy. And I was the only one left who remembered how the story was supposed to go. The bell above the door chimed when I stepped into the diner. Same cracked vinyl booths, same smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee, same waitress who hadn't aged in 15 years. And there, in the back booth, sat my brother. Nathaniel looked like he stepped out of a magazine. Tailored navy jacket, watch worth more than my truck, perfectly styled stubble. A local politician without the office. He stood to greet me with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Well, if it isn't Thoreau himself. Moved into the spider cabin, did you? I forced a half smile. It was the only place with decent neighbors. He laughed, sliding back into the booth. You always did love solitude, and, apparently, cobwebs. I sat across from him, the table sticky beneath my arms. The waitress brought us 2 waters and a look that said, don't make me break up another Carter fight. Small talk limped along, weather, gas prices, how busy he'd been lately. But his eyes kept drifting, watching me, measuring. Finally, I said casually, Grandpa wasn't as far gone as people thought, you know. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Come again? I stirred my water with a straw. I talked to Mr. Langley, said Grandpa was still sharp when he signed that first will. Nathaniel paused just a second too long. Then he scoffed. Yeah, well, the man couldn't even hold a spoon when he changed the will, let alone write it. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. I blinked. Let the silence stretch. Change the will, huh? I said softly. Funny, I don't remember saying which will I meant. His jaw tensed. He looked away, suddenly very interested in his eggs. I didn't push further. Didn't need to. The slip said it all, Nathaniel knew. He hadn't just benefited from the new will, he had helped orchestrate it. As I left the diner, the sun was low over the hills. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown number. The voice was gravelly. Faint, but clear. Jake, this is Langley. I listened to that first cassette. You need to hear it and you need to move fast. My heart thudded. The knives weren't just hidden, they were already in motion. Back at the cabin, night pressed up against the windows like a living thing. The old wood creaked and settled, as if the house itself were whispering secrets. Maybe it was. I cleared off the kitchen table, spread out everything. The original will, Grandpa's note, the audio cassettes, the printed photos, the receipts showing money funneled through Carla's fake caregiving business. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was fraud, and betrayal so deep it had veins. I made 3 files. One for me, neatly labeled and stored in a locked drawer. One back in the wall safe, in case anyone came looking and I didn't make it back in time. And one went digital. Every photo, every document, every audio file. Backed up on a USB drive with a timed cloud release if I went silent for more than 48 hours. Grandpa taught me to fix broken furniture. He also taught me how to protect what matters. The next morning I mailed 3 plain envelopes from the tiny post office in town. Return address blank. Inside each one. Copies of the real will. Transcripts of the tapes. The photo of Mom and Carla whispering over Grandpa's papers. A typed note with just one line. You thought he left nothing behind. Think again. It didn't take long. By that evening my phone rang. Carla, Jake, we need to talk. In person. Her voice was tight, on the edge of desperate. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Nathaniel. Nice forgery. You think this will scare me? I'll see you in court. Sure, Nate. I'd love to see your friend the notary explain his signature under oath. And then, my mother. No call, no message. Just a quiet ding from my bank app. $3,000 transfer. Memo for cabin repairs. I stared at the screen. No apology, no denial, just payment. Like I was a problem to be settled, bought off, like a plumber patching a leak in the foundation. Too late. I wasn't fixing leaks anymore. I was ready to tear down the whole rotten structure, board by board. The invitation came as a surprise. I wasn't expecting it. But then again, family was good at pretending everything was fine. So when Nate texted me about the emergency family dinner, I had a feeling it wasn't a simple catch-up. Still, I showed up. What's a dinner if not another opportunity to watch them squirm? Nate's house was the same as always, expensive, immaculate, the kind of place you had to wear a suit to feel comfortable. I didn't bother with a suit, just my usual jeans and a shirt. Didn't need to try to fit in. They already knew I didn't belong. I walked in with my head held high, like a man who didn't have a secret tucked away under his arm. They didn't know I knew everything, so why should I act any different? Nate was there, of course, with that smirk on his face, the kind of look that said he had all the cards, and he was only waiting to deal them when the time was right. And Mom, Martha, sitting like a queen at the head of the table, as if she still ruled the family. Carla was already there too, looking at me with something cold in her eyes. We didn't speak as I sat down. "So, Jake," Nate began, his voice smooth like oil on water, "I guess you've been busy lately?" I didn't respond immediately. I just picked up the glass of wine in front of me, swirling it, letting the tension hang in the air. I could feel it building already. "You know," he continued, tapping his fingers on the table, "sometimes it's better to just burn the dirty laundry before it gets out, before anyone sees it, you know?" I leaned back in my chair, watching him, trying not to smile. "I wouldn't worry too much about that, Nate," I said, keeping my tone casual, even light. "Some things are already burning." The table went silent for a moment. I could feel Carla stiffen beside me. It was small, but I saw it, the way her hands clenched around her glass. She wasn't nearly as confident as she was pretending to be. I caught a glimpse of Mom's face. She didn't flinch, but I could tell her mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. She was calculating, just like Nate. At some point during the dinner, Carla excused herself to step outside for a smoke. I didn't hesitate. I got up too, walking out the back door as if it was the most natural thing in the world. She was standing near the fence, a cigarette dangling from her fingers, the smoke curling up in the warm evening air. "Jake," she said, her voice hushed, the words almost a whisper. "You wouldn't really go through with it, would you? You wouldn't expose us, would you?" I took a deep breath, walking up to her, the air between us thick with unspoken words. "Why not?" I replied softly. "You've been hiding things for so long. It must feel nice to finally have the truth come out, don't you think?" She looked around, then leaned in closer, her voice even quieter. "You won't, Jake," she said, almost pleading now. "You're not like us. You wouldn't destroy everything." I met her eyes, steady and calm. "Some things are already destroyed, Carla," I said, my voice low but clear. "You just don't know it yet." She looked away then, but not before I saw the crack in her armor. For a second, the cool, confident facade she'd built around herself shattered. I turned and walked back inside, leaving her standing there. The storm was coming. I could feel it in the air. The question wasn't if the truth would come out. It was how far I was willing to let it go. I sat there for hours. The room was dim, the only light coming from the flickering glow of the desk lamp. The house was quiet, too quiet. The silence around me felt oppressive, but I couldn't tear myself away from the pile of cassette tapes in front of me. It wasn't just the tapes, though. It was the truth they contained, every scratchy recording, every broken sentence. The voice of the man I'd always respected, the man who had raised me with quiet strength and who, despite everything, had believed in me when no one else did. Grandpa Walter. I'd already listened to the first one, but this time, I had to focus. This wasn't just a story anymore, it was a blueprint for my revenge. The cassette player hummed as I clicked play. The familiar crackling sound filled the air, and then his voice came through, low, tired, but unmistakably his. "Jake, if you're listening to this, it means I didn't make it out in time. God knows I tried." I paused the tape for a moment, leaning back in my chair. My chest tightened. Grandpa's voice still had that same calm authority, but it was tinged with regret and fear. "I don't know how much longer I have," he continued, the words slower now, as if he were struggling to get them out. "But if Martha and Carla get their hands on my papers, they'll destroy everything. They'll make sure you never see the truth. They'll bury it." I held my breath. The mention of my mother and Carla in the same sentence sent a cold shiver down my spine. He'd known what they were capable of. "Jake," Grandpa's voice came through again, firmer now, "this is for you. You're my voice now. You're the only one I trust to make it right. They don't deserve a dime, not after what they've done, but you'll see it through. You'll make them face what they've hidden." The words hung in the air like a weight. It wasn't just about money or power anymore, it was about family, and how deep the betrayal ran. How they had all used me, ignored me, dismissed me, but not Grandpa. He had seen me for who I really was. I hit pause, wiping the sweat off my palms. For the first time since I'd found that damn safe, I felt a flicker of something other than rage, something like purpose. I'd been angry for so long, feeling small and invisible. But in that moment, as I listened to Grandpa's words, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just some forgotten member of the family. I was his heir, his voice. He'd passed the torch to me, whether I was ready or not. And now, I had a choice: let them destroy everything or burn it all down and take my place at the table. The tape continued to play, but my mind was racing. I knew what I had to do. I had to make sure they couldn't hide the truth. I grabbed my laptop, opening the files I'd been compiling over the past few days. The documents, the photos, the bank statements, the signed affidavits. I had everything. It was time to get it all in one place. I started editing the post I had drafted on Reddit, the one I'd been too hesitant to publish. But now I wasn't hesitating. Not anymore. The title of the post sat there, bold and final. My family stole my inheritance. Here's the truth. Underneath, I created a timeline. Each date. Every crucial detail. I attached files, photos of the altered wills, audio clips of my conversations with Mr. Langley, documents proving the financial fraud, and even a few screen captures of the conversations between Carla and Mom. I typed up the last line with trembling fingers. You thought you could erase me, but here's everything you tried to hide. You'll see it all now. My heart pounded in my chest as I clicked submit. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a spectator in my own life. I was a player now. The game was on, and I had all the cards. As I sat there, watching the screen, waiting for the world to change, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and anxiety. Was this the right move? Was I ready to expose the family I had once tried so hard to belong to? But Grandpa's voice echoed in my mind. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing it for him. For the truth. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I finally had the power to fight back. I watched the screen as the post went live. My heart hammered in my chest, and for a moment, everything around me seemed to freeze. The flashing cursor blinked on the screen, as if mocking me, daring me to go through with it. My family forged my grandfather's will and stole everything, but he left me this. The title was bold, the content was damning. I included every last detail, every scrap of evidence I had carefully collected. Photos of the altered will, audio recordings of Grandpa's warnings, documents that showed the financial transactions and fraudulent actions taken by my family, and the copies of the emails exchanged between Carla, Mom, and Mr. Langley. The final touch? Grandpa's voice, the recording I had listened to so many times, the one that would give them all the truth. I posted it all, every name, every lie. I clicked submit, and for a long, heavy moment, I sat there in the stillness of my cabin waiting for something, anything, to happen. Within minutes, the post started getting attention. The first comment came in like a shot. No way this is real, but if it is, this family deserves to rot in hell. Then another, and another. The comments exploded. People sharing it, tagging local journalists, wondering how this could happen in their own town. The post went viral. By the time I had checked my phone, my notifications were overwhelmed. My Reddit post had skyrocketed to the front page, and it wasn't just a few angry comments anymore. No, it was a storm. People from all over were asking questions, offering support, and sharing similar stories of their own families betraying them for money. I refreshed my inbox, and there they were, the first few journalists reaching out. I didn't even have time to process it before my phone started ringing. The first call came from a local reporter named Lisa Harper. She was persistent, polite, and very interested in the story. She'd already found the records, she told me. She knew who had been involved. I just need you to confirm one thing, Jake, she said, her voice calm but urgent. Your family members, including your mother and brother, have been implicated in this, correct? And you're saying your grandfather's will was altered without his consent? I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Implicated? They were guilty as hell. Yes, I said, my voice steady. Everything in that post is true. I've got the proof. Lisa didn't hesitate. We'll make sure the public knows. The next few days were a blur. My inbox overflowed with more calls and emails, but it wasn't just the media. The ripple effect was already starting to show in real time. Nina, my old neighbor, called. Did you see the local paper? She asked. There's an article about you and your family. The whole town knows. I grabbed my coffee and flicked open the local news website. The headline screamed, Local man claims family stole inheritance. Documents suggest fraudulent activity and forged wills. I clicked through to read the story, my pulse quickening. Lisa had done a thorough job. She'd included all the key details, quoted some of the evidence, and even referenced my post on Reddit. But what really caught my eye was the kicker at the end of the article. In light of these allegations, officials have begun an investigation into the estate of the late Walter Carter, and local authorities are expected to review the will's validity. This could lead to significant legal consequences for the Carter family. The fallout was immediate. I watched in real time as my family's reputation crumbled. Nate's phone started blowing up. The emails, the calls, they were all coming from his clients, his business partners, the ones who had supported his lavish lifestyle. But no one wanted to be associated with a man accused of forging his own family's will. The contracts were pulled. The deals fell through. It didn't take long for his company's financial reputation to plummet. And then there was Carla. The IRS came calling just as I'd expected. They were investigating her involvement in the financial transactions I had uncovered, the fake care receipts for Grandpa, the money transfers to accounts that didn't exist. They had her on their radar, and she knew it. And Martha, my mother. Her silence had been broken. She finally showed up at my cabin, her face drawn, pale, eyes wide with fear. She'd probably been hoping it would all blow over, but it hadn't. The post was just the beginning. She was called in for a hearing on the will, and it wasn't going to be pretty. I could hear her voice crack on the other end of the phone when I picked up. "Jake," she said, her tone sharp but desperate. "This is insane. You can't just air all our dirty laundry like this. You're going to ruin everything." "Everything was already ruined, Mom," I replied, feeling the anger I had kept bottled up for years finally rise. "You don't get to silence me anymore." The storm was just beginning. The family I had once longed to belong to, the family that had dismissed me for so long, was crumbling under the weight of their lies. And for the first time, I wasn't the invisible one anymore. I was the one they couldn't escape, and as I sat there, watching the chaos unfold, I knew this was only the beginning. The dust had barely settled, but the damage was already undeniable. I sat at my desk, watching the chaos unfold on the other side of the screen. My family's name, once synonymous with respect, wealth, and status, was now tarnished, dragged through the mud. It didn't take long for the entire town to take sides, and the side that supported me was growing by the day. The more people read, the more they shared. And with each passing hour, the truth spread further. My family's lies were being exposed for what they were: greed, betrayal, and deceit. But it wasn't just the public's opinion that had changed. I opened my email, and the latest update from the bank hit me like a slap. Carla's accounts had been frozen, the accounts where she'd funneled money from Grandpa's estate, the ones that hadn't been questioned before. The bank had done its due diligence, and now she was a suspect. It wasn't just the financial side of things. Her business, which had once been thriving, was now sinking. The IRS was on her back, and creditors were circling. All of her carefully constructed walls were crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I sat back in my chair, feeling a flicker of satisfaction, but it didn't last long. The phone rang. I picked up the receiver without looking at the screen. I already knew who it was. "Nate," I said, my voice low and steady. "What is it this time? I want you to take everything down." Now, his voice came through, cold and controlled. "This is destroying everything. You've done enough. Remove the post, Jake. It's over." I leaned back, tapping my fingers lightly on the desk. "The only thing that can erase the truth is a court order, Nate. Not you, not me, not anyone. This isn't going anywhere." His silence on the other end of the line was a sharp contrast to the fury I had expected. "I'm serious," he finally muttered. "If you don't, there will be consequences. You've already ruined our lives. Don't make it worse." I smiled, a bitter twist on my lips. "You've ruined your own life, Nate. Don't try to pin that on me." And with that, I hung up. It didn't end there. As expected, my mother's call came next. "Jake," she cried, her voice trembling. "I can't believe you did this. You've ruined all of us. What have you done?" Her words were hollow. There was no apology. No recognition of the years of lies, of how she had let my brother manipulate everything, how she had silenced me for so long. No, it was all about her, about them. "I did what needed to be done, Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the fire burning inside me. "You've managed fine without me, haven't you? You'll survive this too, but now, you'll have to do it without my silence." There was a long pause, and I could almost hear the weight of her guilt hanging on the line. "Jake," she said quietly, "please, just stop. Think about what this is doing to all of us." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "What about what it did to me?" "I'm thinking about what it did to me," I replied flatly. "I've spent my whole life in the shadows, Mom. It's time for the truth to come out." I ended the call before she could say anything else. It was done. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. My family's reputation, the foundation they'd built their lives on, had crumbled, piece by piece, until nothing was left but the bitter taste of their betrayal. But for me, the satisfaction was fleeting. I had fought for this, yes, but it wasn't the victory I had imagined. Watching them flounder, watching them lose everything they had worked so hard to keep, it was hollow. It wasn't justice. It wasn't even closure. It was just the consequence of their actions. In the end, it wasn't the public fallout, the legal battles, or the loss of money that hurt them the most. It was the loss of control, the fact that they could no longer hide behind their lies, the fact that I had taken everything from them, not by force, not through violence, but by the simple act of revealing the truth. I had made sure they'd be forced to face it, and as I watched my family unravel from a distance, I realized that the only thing I had left was my own sense of justice. No amount of money, no amount of reputation, could take that away from me. They would rebuild, no doubt, but I would never be part of that rebuilding, and for the first time in my life, I was okay with that. The storm was over, the dust had settled, and all that was left was the silence of my own resolve. The walls of the cabin felt different now, not just in the physical sense, but in the air. There was a weight lifted, a sense of peace that had been absent for years. The dust had settled, and I could finally breathe. I had always thought of this place as a relic from the past, something that didn't quite belong to me. But now, as I stood in the middle of the living room, I realized that it was more than just a house. It was my sanctuary, my claim to a legacy that I had fought for, fought through, and now had finally won. The fireplace crackled softly as I tossed another log onto the flames. The warmth from the fire spread through the room, wrapping around me like an old, familiar embrace. The floor, newly polished, creaked gently under my feet as I walked across the room to admire the shelves I just finished installing. They were simple, sturdy, but they were mine, a reflection of the man I was becoming. There was still a lot to be done, but for the first time in a long time I didn't feel rushed. I had time to make this house my home. Ellie had been a constant presence these past few weeks. The neighbor from my childhood, who had somehow stayed in the town long after I'd left, had returned from her travels just when I needed a hand. She was as practical as she was kind, and she had a way of making even the most mundane tasks seem like a shared adventure. She helped me with the garden, turning what had once been a neglected patch of earth into something that looked alive again. It wasn't just the work itself though, it was the time spent together, the quiet conversations between planting rows of tomatoes or trimming the hedges. We had history, Ellie and I, but there was something more now, something unspoken. We'd share a smile when our hands brushed by accident, and I'd catch her lingering a moment longer than necessary, like she was trying to decide if she should say something. I could feel the pull between us, but neither of us had said anything yet. Maybe it didn't need to be said. One afternoon, while Ellie was tending to the roses in the front yard, I wandered through the cabin, admiring the little changes I'd made. My eyes fell on a patch of wood near the corner of the room. It was an old knot in the grain, but there was something familiar about it. I knelt down and ran my hand over the surface. There, carved into the wood, was a name, Jake, the real heir. I stopped breathing for a moment. My heart pounded in my chest and my hand shook as I traced the letters. It wasn't just some random carving. It was from my grandfather. He'd left his mark here. This was the proof, the final confirmation that this place, this legacy was mine. It was all part of the plan. The truth had been here all along, hidden in plain sight. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself sitting by the fireplace, the room bathed in the soft glow of the flames. The house felt different now, alive, not just with memories but with the promise of what was to come. I pulled out the letter from my grandfather, the one he'd left for me in the safe. The one that had started all of this. My fingers brushed against the paper as I unfolded it once more. I had read it so many times, and yet, each time it felt as if I were hearing it for the first time. Jake, if you're reading this, it means they got greedy. Don't let them bury the truth. I smiled softly, a bittersweet ache in my chest. He'd been right. The truth hadn't been buried, And I'd found it. It had cost me everything, but it had given me more in return. A new beginning, a place where I truly belonged. I stood up, walked to the fire, and held the letter out in front of me, letting the flames catch on the edges. The paper curled, darkened, and then disintegrated into ash. I watched it burn until there was nothing left but smoke and embers. "You were right, Grandpa," I murmured to the night. "I found the truth, and I'm finally home." The heat from the fire warmed my face, and for the first time in years I felt at peace. I had come back to where it all started, and I was no longer running from my past. This was where I was meant to be, and no one could take that away from me. I sat back down, the crackling of the fire filling the room. Ellie's voice floated in from outside, a quiet laugh, the sound of something being knocked over, followed by her apologetic chuckle. I smiled. There were still so many things left to do, but tonight, I had everything I needed. This was my house now, and for the first time, it felt like home.